Appreciate you joining us in the trenches with Dave Lapham, brought to you by First Star Logistics, as always, coming to you from our studios, which are outstanding, none better. And man, we're talking Super Bowl 58, instant classic, particularly fourth quarter and overtime. Unbelievable instant classic. We had to talk about it. Who better to talk about it than Solomon Wilcots? Played in the National Football League with the Cincinnati Bengals, Pittsburgh Steelers, others. I mean, he played a long time in the National Football League. Now, broadcaster extraordinaire, podcaster extraordinaire. Solly was part of the Super Bowl media all week long. So nobody has a better perspective on the Super Bowl 58 than Solomon Wilcots. And we talked to him about things that occurred, pros and cons, the yin and yang of Super Bowl 58. We talk about the Cincinnati Bengals, the impact that how Super Bowl 58 unfolded. Cincinnati Bengals playing both of those teams in Super Bowl 58, what it looks like down the road. And we also talk about Taylor Swift and the impact the Swifties have on the National Football League and on the economy in general. So it's a big education with none other than Solomon Wilcots. Appreciate you joining us in the trenches with Dave Lapham, brought to you by First Star Logistics, as always, coming to you from our outstanding studio setup here. And it's the day after the Super Bowl. So what better guy to talk to than Solomon Wilcots the day after the Super Bowl, because he was there. He was in Vegas doing a show on Radio Row for the entire week. And I'm sure he's got a lot of opinions about this Super Bowl. Maybe not the greatest played Super Bowl, but unbelievably exciting Super Bowl, Solly. What do you think, man?
Well, I would say this: for the first three quarters, I don't think it was a poorly played game. It just wasn't a lot of action. You know, when both of your star running backs, Christian McCaffrey and Isaiah Pacheco, both fumble in the first half. Yep. And then the second half starts with Pat Mahomes throwing interception on the Chiefs' first offensive drive. You start to think, well, is Usher the best part of the game? Is the halftime show the best part of the game? Because it was almost a snooze fest. But then the fourth quarter, that both teams kind of came alive. I just thought it's like a good heavyweight fight. Both were landing some blows. Both was landing some punches. You thought the Niners were in position to win it after starting off with a 10-0 lead and then taking a 10-3 lead at halftime. But I think most of us knew that Pat Mahomes and Andy Reid were tough to bet against. You just don't do it.
Yeah.
And, and working in the age of analytics, and I'm good friends with people who work in the space. I've done some work there myself.
Sure.
And understand the data. And I do see it as a positive tool to use. This is one of those moments where it lets you know none of the matrix of analytics could have pointed you to what Pat Mahomes has. I think it's that special. He is that kind of guy that's so hard to beat. You know, he's won 83% of the games that he's played in the postseason.
Unreal.
And none of the metrics would have told you that he was going to have this kind of start to his career.
It's amazing. 28 years old. 3 Super Bowl victories, 3 Super Bowl MVPs, throws for 333 yards in this football game, 69 yards rushing, the leading rusher, accounting for 399 yards offense. I mean, it's absurd. It's obscene what this guy is doing, you know. And but you made mention of it, Solly. How about Spags? I mean, Spags now has won 4 Super Bowls, 1 with the Giants, 3 with the Chiefs, the most of any assistant as a defensive coordinator, the most as any coordinator, any assistant in the history of the National Football League. Does he get in the Hall of Fame as an assistant coach? Is he the first true assistant coach to get in the Hall of Fame?
Look, I think there would be a really good case for doing it. The guys who vote on this are the writers. They are the guys who are supposed to be the, quote, guardians of our game, right? The guys who chronicle the day-to-day happenings in our game. And I always say that this is kind of how you define what a Hall of Famer is. We all know that they're great at what they do. They help impact our game in some way, form, or fashion, or at least help impact their teams, the cities that they either played or coached in. But can you tell the history of our game 100 years from now? If you look back and you're going to tell the history of the NFL, can you tell it without that individual? And I said this all week on Radio Row as we were talking about all the sort of people involved in this game, coaches and players alike. And I said, we've all known who Steve Spagnuolo is.
Right.
He didn't have to win another Super Bowl. I said, this is the guy that stopped Tom Brady and Bill Belichick from having an undefeated season.
Yep.
With the likes of Michael Strahan and Justin Tuck and O.C. Yemenura. They turned back one of the great offenses this game has ever seen. And every time I see Spags, I said, the guy who created the game plan that stopped Bill Belichick in his tracks. And he's such a humble guy, you know. He just smiles, but he likes it. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah.
Because I don't know that enough people give him credit for what he accomplished. I saw that game plan. The game plan for that game itself should be enshrined in Canton.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's how I've always seen Spags. I'm happy that he's doing what he's doing now, you know, and winning Super Bowls. And you're right, the only defensive coordinator in NFL history to win 4 Super Bowls as a coordinator. That's just phenomenal. And it speaks to how bright he is, how talented he is. You know, for 2 years in a row, he's played with the youngest defense, and all he's done is won back-to-back Super Bowls calling defenses with a very young group. Amazing.
I mean, he gave up 16 points a game defensively in this postseason run, and to the Super Bowl victory. In this day and age, I mean, it was even when we were playing back in the day, you hold an offense 17 points less, you have a high percentage of winning that football game. In today's NFL, you hold these offenses to 17 or less, and he did it to the entire playoffs, including the Super Bowl. I mean, that's just an incredible run. You can't say enough about the guy. Let's jump back to Patrick Mahomes for a second. I mean, I remember covering him at Texas Tech, and you did as well, Solly, back in the days when he was there. And the late, great Mike Leach, I remember talking to Mike Leach about this young quarterback, and he goes, most physically gifted kid I've ever seen, has got the most strength in his arm and accuracy I've ever seen, can run like a deer, and incredibly, he's got a beautiful mind. I said, is he got a higher football IQ than you? I mean, you with this, run and shoot you're doing there? He goes, absolutely. I mean, God blessed him with unbelievable resources and talent. I mean, I think he's John Elway with a quicker ability to read the field and make the right decision. He is unreal.
And that's saying a lot, because I still have a great deal of respect for John Elway.
Yeah.
And I remember I was in school in Boulder when John Elway was a rookie in the NFL. And he did struggle in some of his early going, right?
Right.
It did not come to him as quickly. And while he did try to carry a team early in his career, because he made them good pretty much right away, but they weren't able to get over the hump. They had lost 3 Super Bowls before they ended up winning 2 straight Super Bowl games at the end of John's career, right? Yep. So as great as John was, what we're seeing Pat Mahomes do is even greater. And we're seeing him do it so early in his career that it speaks to the beautiful mind that he has. I talked with Pat Mahomes Sr., Junior's dad, and he told me that he used to interview Pat when he was a kid, like interview him, like, okay, you're the quarterback, game's over. He asked him all these tough questions, because you remember his dad played in Major League Baseball with the likes of Jeter and A-Rod. And so, they were used to being around guys who were the guys who had done it and were still doing it at a high level in athletics.
Right.
And his dad said he would interview him and ask him these questions. He said, and Pat knew how to defer. He knew how to take the blame, but knew how to defer all the glory to his teammates. Like that came naturally to him. And to think about that kind of mindset in a young man, in a very young man, his father is teaching him how to deal with the media, how to really be gracious, which I think is just a great dad, by the way, that you're teaching your son just how to be courteous to people, right? And so I just think that's phenomenal. But yeah, Pat got a lot of it naturally, according to his father. Now, there was some nurturing going on, I think, with his dad, with other coaches that he had. And then even when he came into the league with Andy Reid, and he played behind Alex Smith for one year. So he's always been like a sponge, right? Just soaking it up and eating it up. And now we have this wonderful specimen of an athlete that, oh, by the way, I'm sure if you were to dive deep, Dave, and ask him, did you learn a little bit from watching Michael Jordan's Last Dance? Did you learn a little bit from the great Michael Jordan about how to be laser focused, how to draw from your enemies a little bit, to motivate yourself? Everything that I've seen in Michael Jordan, that we know about Michael Jordan, I see in Patrick Mahomes.
You know, it's a great analogy. And you look at Michael Jordan, I mean, poor Charles Barkley, one of the greatest players ever. Michael Jordan said, no, Charles, not for you. That's what Mahomes is doing to all these other great quarterbacks. Allen. Now, Joe Burrow's 3-1 against him. He's 1-1 in the playoffs against him. And if he can stay healthy, hopefully he can interrupt this streak a little bit. But I mean, that's the only guy he's got a losing record against with these star quarterbacks. It's incredible how he can turn it up at the biggest moment, And when I watched them play against the Raiders during the season, Solly, no way did I think that they were going to be holding the Lombardi Trophy like they are right now.
Yeah, it's like that's the other component that we ought to give credit to this team, because I've said this all at the Super Bowl. I think we have to get accustomed to seeing teams win and win championships. But if you were to dissect the team, you would say they're less than perfect. You and I grew up on the Big Red Machine.
Yep.
Right. We grew up on the Yankees. With Reggie Jackson and great pitching, great hitting. We grew up on a dynastic team, whether it was the Green Bay Packers of the 60s, whether it was the Cowboys and Steelers of the 70s, right? And even the 49ers of the 80s. Those teams it was murderer's row. If you just looked at the lineup, the Celtics and Lakers, there were no weak areas on those teams. That's what we were accustomed to. That's why they were called the Red Machine. Like it was a machine. It was unbeatable, unbreakable. And now with the salary cap, with free agency, these teams have to learn how to function and how to pull together to cover up their weak areas. That if you're not strong, and it's always been said that, chain's only as strong as its weakest link. It's even more so now. There's going to be a weak link in the chain. But as a team, you got to band together to protect that area. If it's the wide receivers, you know what you do if you're Andy Reid, like you did in the Super Bowl 58, you run the ball a little bit more, like you did with Isaiah Pacheco. You learn that you got to get the ball to Travis Kelce. That's why you saw him heated with Andy Reid. Like, what are we doing? What are we doing? We're giving the ball to people who are going to fumble it and drop the ball and give the game away. That's why he was frustrated, because they were getting away a little bit from the formula they had. But you got to cover up some of those weak areas. And that's what we've got to become more accustomed to really understanding, that teams are not going to be perfect, but they still can win championships.
It's remarkable. The overtime rules changed when Patrick Mahomes went down the field on the first possession. The coin toss decided an AFC championship game. Mahomes goes down and scores. Allen never gets a chance of possession. They changed the overtime rule. And now it's coming out that the 49er players weren't really aware of the changes in the overtime rule. And they're saying Shanahan wasn't quite totally aware of the changes in the overtime rule. I find that hard to believe. But what do you think when they won the coin toss and he took the football? What did you think about that, Solly?
I was okay with him taking the ball here. Yep. And I know a lot of people this morning are saying, no, he should have kicked the ball to Mahomes. Just listen to that.
Yeah.
You wouldn't do that in any overtime, because that guy is going to beat you. First of all, here's what Kyle Shanahan know. This is where I believe that people need to understand, man, you're not a coach. There's no way you know better than Kyle Shanahan. I mean, this guy grew up at the feet of one of the great coaches our league has seen under Mike Shanahan, his dad.
No doubt.
So here's what we're doing, because everyone the next morning is so much smarter on what Kyle should have done, right? Only because he lost, because clearly he should have done something different. He lost.
Hindsight, 2020.
But in that scenario, I know a lot of football people are saying this morning. He did the right thing. Patrick Mahomes, we call him the Grim Reaper because of this. You give him the ball last, he is going to beat you. At that point in the game, he had scored on 3 straight possessions to end the game in regulation. They went 11 plays, 65 yards in 11 plays with 3 seconds left.
Right.
They tied the game up and sent it into overtime. Now you're walking to the center of the field. You're flipping the coin. Hear me out, Dave. Now, you're the Niners. You won the toss. You're going to put your defense back out on the field? Just hear me out. They were tired. Both sides are tired. You open to defense, whose tongues are wagging because they just got off the field. They just gave up an 11-play, 64-yard drive.
Yep. They
barely have time to get Gatorade, and you're going to say, go try to stop Mahomes again. You haven't done it in the last 3 drives, but go do it again. That's what the coach knows that all the other second-rate, second-guessers on Monday morning didn't even think about, even though they have that information in front of them. But they just jump on to what other people say. Sounds good. Yeah, they should have not done that. Look, no. Listen, Mahomes is going to score anyway.
Right.
What the Niners were trying to do, they needed to score, and they needed to score a touchdown. But they kicked the field goal. They had come up with stops against the Chiefs on their first 4 drives to begin the second half. They had an interception and then 3 consecutive punts by the Niners. It was on the 3rd punt where the 49ers muffed the punt, gave the ball back to Mahomes, and he scores on 1 play.
Right on.
And from that moment on, the complexion of the game changed. The momentum swung. Everything changed. The Niners defense was dealing. So, yeah, I'm going to not put them on the field right now. I'm going to let them get rest because we're going to have to come up with a stop with these new rules. But guess what? The Chiefs weren't stopping the Niners offense either. They were going down. They were scoring. Just that on that drive, they ended up having to settle for a field goal. But they were 1 of 2 down inside the red zone. It would have been another touchdown, but remember, McCaffrey fumbled on the very first drive of the game. Yep. That was a red zone fumble.
Yep. You know, you look at it, how about San Francisco special teams? You talk about the punt, the botched punt that hits the foot, and you know, instead of falling on it, trying to scoop it and return it or whatever, fall on the ball, please, man. Just fall on it, recover the football. And then the blocked extra point. I mean, you know, he hits a 55 and 53-yard field goal, but a high snap, you know, and then he kicks it like with his ankle almost, a low kick that gets blocked. 2 special teams gaffes cost him 8 points. Like you said, after that botched punt, touchdown, the extra point blocked. 8 points on 2 special teams gaffes in a game that was an overtime game. Man, San Francisco 49ers special teams had a tough day, man.
Yeah, Niners needed that 1 point, didn't they? Because the way things played out, the Chiefs would have been on the last drive in regulation. They would have been driving, trailing by 4 and not by 3. Yeah. They would have had to score a touchdown to take the lead. A field goal would not have done them some good, good at all, had they been trailing by 4. And that's if the Niners would have converted on the extra point. So that goes to show you that it is a game of inches, that it does come down to these very minor detailed plays. You and I played the game. Coaches have always told us you never know when and where the deciding play of the game is going to happen. You got to play every single snap like it's your last, especially in a Super Bowl, right? I mean, every single play is critical. Every single moment is critical. Every single opportunity that you squander, you just left the door cracked open for Pat Mahomes and Andy Reid to kick that door open. 10-point lead, you squander a double-digit loss, and you still have opportunities to win the game. But that's where the game was won and lost, I thought, at least by the 49ers.
Shanahan, 3 Super Bowls. He has a 10-point lead or more at halftime, double-digit lead or more at halftime, has lost all 3. Unbelievable. I mean, the nightmare keeps recurring. It's like it's absolutely crazy. I mean, that's almost incomprehensible when you think about it. A guy that has probably not gotten as much love as he probably should have. Chris Jones prevented 2 touchdown passes. I thought Purdy played very well. Purdy has 2 touchdown opportunities. Chris Jones gets such quick pressure. He has to throw it before he really wants to, and his receivers are there to make plays, but he can't quite make the throw he wants to make. Chris Jones, it's oh man, you look at his tackles, you look at his, get to the pressure column. Those 2 pressures were huge. They kept 2 touchdowns off the board, man.
And I think this is where I'm going to stop and just point out the difference between, as much as we like Brock Purdy, and I do, I'm a big fan of his, as much as we saw him post numbers the game has never seen. His 9.6 yard per pass attempt, that's the best you've ever seen from a quarterback to start every game during the season in the NFL.
Yeah.
He set franchise records for passing yards in a single season. This is a franchise that had Steve Young and Joe Montana for multiple seasons, and he rewrites franchise record books for passing and passer rating. But the difference is right in there, what you just described, with Chris Jones breathing down his neck. Hadn't hit him, hadn't sacked him yet, but the presence, that's what pressure really is. It's void of the sack quotient, but it's where you're close to getting sacked, where you're close to getting hit. You're feeling the presence of that defender, but still can you stick that throw? Still can you make that throw? Now, look, he's only a second-year quarterback. Right. I've talked to Ben Roethlisberger when Ben, I think, was in his second or third year when they went to a Super Bowl against Seattle. Man, he was a different player in that game than he was later in his career when they played the Arizona Cardinals, and he was throwing dimes. So this is not an indictment on Brock Purdy in terms of who he'll be. I think the fact that he's a second-year player, he's very young, that pressure like that is going to bother you. But the really elite, you know this. And we got some guys who've been in this league for 10 years, and they can't make that throw while under pressure. And then there's only a handful. And those are the guys that win championships. Those are the guys that really are very special, that they can throw the ball in those tight windows, even when they're under pressure. In 2021, the #1 rated quarterback in the NFL while under pressure was Joe Burrow. And he was ranked top 5 again in 2022. So I'm just giving the data points to say that he is another quarterback like Patrick Mahomes that can still make those throws despite still being under pressure.
All right, so that leads me to a segue here. You mentioned Joe Burrow. Mm-hmm. The 2 years he's been totally healthy, the Cincinnati Bengals, they go to the AFC Championship game, and they go to the Super Bowl. The other years, not so much. This year, the 2 Super Bowl participants that just finished their classic Super Bowl decided in overtime. The Bengals beat the 49ers on the road October 29th, 31-17. Now, the 49ers didn't have their left tackle. They didn't have their Swiss Army knife in Deebo Samuel. They were down 31-17 on the road at San Francisco. They intercepted Purdy more than once. And then December 31st at Kansas City, that's not Joe Burrow at quarterback. It's Jake Browning. It's a 1-score game, 25-17. The Cincinnati Bengals, if they can keep Joe Burrow healthy, the 2 teams that went to the Super Bowl, they played them off their feet. The future looks decent, obviously, or better for the Bengals, doesn't it, Solly?
I think it does. Yeah, I think it looks real bright. We have an issue in our league right now where the quarterbacks can't stay healthy. And it's incumbent upon several things. I think the rules have gone as far as we can go when it comes to protecting quarterbacks, right? And now we're asking quarterbacks to do a better job of protecting themselves. Look, Tom Brady has said it. It's up to the quarterbacks not to throw the ball in harm's way to help protect receivers. Because he's recognized now that he's on this side of it that, man, the players could do a better job of protecting themselves, that the legislating of protection probably has gone as far as you can go without turning it into the Pro Bowl, right? Without turning it into something that it wasn't meant to be. And so that's where, and so teams are going to have to do a better job of building protection around the quarterback. There's no doubt about it. I'm not for listening to conversations that people put the onus on Joe Burrow to give money back to an organization that's a solution, because it's not. We have not seen anywhere across the whole landscape of sports where a player says, here, I'm going to take a whole lot less, and the team takes that money and goes on and win championships. Just doesn't happen. You know that it doesn't happen. Right. Let's think more corporately across any industry. Where would you go ask the lowest paid people at the bottom of the organization to ask the people to do the work of the people at the top of the organization to make them solvent in how they run a business? It's just, it's not the right conversation to be having. I think it puts the wrong kind of eyeballs on a player like Joe Burrow, who by all intents and purposes has done everything within his power to deliver on the promise of bringing a championship, right? So to even have that conversation, it becomes so divisive that I think it's unfair to him, to be honest with you, because he's going to work and play as hard as he can. I get concerned also that because I used to have these conversations with Andrew. Look, I'm like, Andrew, man, you play the game with this reckless abandonment. You got to take care of yourself. You got to get down. You got to. So I'm talking to Andrew like, you need to do more to protect you, because no one else is coming to the rescue. And then he ended up having to walk away from the game early. And we, as football fans, were robbed of what I thought was going to be a Hall of Fame career. And I feel the same way with Joe Burrow. Joe has a way of playing where he plays with his heart, right? He's a tough guy. But I'm telling you, the toughest quarterbacks, they don't play long. They just don't, they don't age well in our game.
Right.
It's the guys that say, they'll drop before they take that hit. And that's not that they're a coward or that they're chicken. They understand the win-loss quotient of that equation. Like, to do the right thing, staying healthy is really my number one job first. And then secondly, all the other things in terms of, winning games and all those things, you cannot do that if you don't stay on the field. And so finding a way to stay healthy is priority number one. But he also needs some help from the organization to get that done. Like, for instance, if he wants to play every play under shotgun, as a coach, I'm like, look, here's what putting you under center really does. It helps your offensive line to protect you better, right?
Yeah.
It helps your receivers to get greater separation down the field. It does a lot of things for the offense as a whole. And at some point in time, you've got to begin to put things into play that help the entire apparatus, even though the one player, as great as he is, may have a preference to do one thing. You've got to say, if we're going to grow as a team, and if we're going to help everyone on the offense be good, this is how we need to play. And I think smart heads will prevail with that conversation.
That right there is a big reason why I wanted to catch up with Solomon Wilcots after the Super Bowl LVIII, one of the most entertaining in Super Bowl history, because there's no doubt Patrick Mahomes is a football savant, beautiful mind. Joe Burrow, Andy Reid, I mean, you can go on and on. But Solomon Wilcots has a beautiful football mind as well, and that's why I love catching up with Solly. And Solly, thanks for doing this with us. I know you had an unbelievably busy week doing all your shows, your podcasts, everything, everything you did on Radio Raw out there. I know it can be exhausting. I know Vegas had to be, 10 pounds of crap in a 5-pound bag out there. I mean, it had to be overflowing everywhere.
I'll say this. The NFL is great, Dave. It's grown at a level. It's like the mothership, right? If you're on board, man, there's so much that we can do to help each other in the way that the league helps us and the way they allow us to use their platforms to do other business, right? Whether it's, I work in public relations with healthcare and biotech and pharmaceutical businesses who bring their products and services to the market that really do help people, right? It's about treatments, and it's about those things that we sometimes take for granted because they need FDA approval. And by the way, all the drugs that we use now, that when we find ourselves ill and then we find ourselves feeling better as a result, someone had to go through some clinical trial process to bring those services to market. And now we're doing that. We're helping companies accomplish the same because people are being helped and being healed. And the NFL platform is helping us do that. And so kudos to Roger Goodell and many of the people in the front office in New York who work with this league and understand the power that they have to really help so many different businesses, what they call their business partners. You and I both know because you know how they operate.
Sure.
It's really great to be a part of it. I don't know how much longer I'm going to do this, but while I'm doing it, I'm going to try to at least do some good with it.
And you do, Solly. I mean, you're an unbelievable ambassador to the National Football League, and it's a prideful thing. I mean, we both played. Now we're both still doing things with the National Football League and some sort of an affiliation, and it's an honor and a privilege to be associated with an entity that understands how big it is and how important it is and how much it can help others. I mean, it really is a privilege.
It really is. And I'll tell you this, because there seemed to be a lot of talk about Taylor Swift, right? But look, Commissioner Roger Goodell said at his press conference in Las Vegas that she has driven the number upward.
Yep.
She's brought more people to our game who otherwise may not even know who Travis Kelce is, right? Without her. And the fact that we're bringing in young ladies who are now excited about our game, I think that's cool. The fact that we have more people watching our game more than ever, I think that's cool. The fact that she drove 1% of the gross domestic product, 1% of the GDP, either directly or indirectly. She moves the needle at the cash register. And Dave, you know this as well as I do. In sports, they're keeping two scores. One on the scoreboard, the other at the cash register. So it's something we got to pay attention to. So I just wanted to put that out there.
No question about it, Solly. Bring on the Swifties. Bring them on. I mean, that's powerful. It's powerful.
The more the merrier, right? The more
no
the
doubt. No doubt. Solly, as always, spending time with Solomon Wilcots, talking football and business and whatever, never disappoints. You're the best, my man. Appreciate your time.
You're the best as well. Thanks, Dave. Keep up the good work.
Thank you. You too, Solly. Dave Lapham here, and every day I am grateful for my experience to have played professional football. As a player, I realized self-motivation, leadership, and appreciating your teammates are key. At First Star Logistics, you can use those same attributes to create the life you want for you and your family. Build your future by working hard like I did. You'll see results both on and off the field. Call First Star Logistics today and be part of our winning team. Opportunity knocking.